The twin moons of Valari Prime hung low in the sky, casting a silver glow over the dense alien jungle. Marcus Hale, a human explorer, moved cautiously through the undergrowth. He had crash-landed on this planet days ago, and survival had become his only focus. His supplies were running low, and he had yet to find a way off this hostile world. Suddenly, the night air was shattered by a thunderous explosion. A fiery wreckage lit up the horizon, followed by the sounds of blaster fire. Marcus crept forward, keeping low. As he reached the edge of a clearing, his breath caught in his throat. A convoy of sleek, golden hovercrafts lay in ruins. Smoke and fire rose from the broken vehicles. Scattered bodies of Valari guards, an alien species with tall, elegant figures and shimmering violet skin, littered the ground. At the center of the chaos stood a lone figure, a female, her flowing royal robes now torn and stained with dirt. Her glowing amber eyes burned with defiance as she wielded a curved energy blade. Princess Zyra of the Valari Empire. She was surrounded by mercenaries, armored, faceless figures, their weapons raised. Marcus didn't know much about the politics of this planet, but he understood one thing. This was an ambush, and she was the target. One of the mercenaries stepped forward, his blaster aimed at Zyra's chest. "Your reign ends tonight, Princess," the attacker growled. Marcus didn't hesitate. He grabbed a metal fragment from the wreckage, its edges sharp like a blade. Taking a deep breath, he moved like a shadow, sneaking behind the closest mercenary. With a swift motion, he plunged the jagged weapon into the mercenary's back, disabling him before he could react. The others turned in shock, but Marcus was already moving. Using his human agility, he dodged blaster fire, rolled across the ground, and snatched a fallen guard's energy pistol. He fired 3 rapid shots, hitting one enemy in the leg and forcing the others to take cover. Zyra used the distraction. With a fierce cry, she sliced through another attacker, her golden blade cutting through their armor like paper. Together, they fought back to back, Marcus covering her with precise gunfire while she danced through the battlefield like a storm, her blade a blur of light. The last mercenary hesitated before turning to flee into the jungle. Marcus exhaled sharply, lowering his stolen weapon. He turned to Zyra. "You okay?" he asked, his voice rough from exhaustion. She stared at him, this strange, reckless human who had just saved her life. Then, before Marcus could react, she raised her hand and shouted something in her alien tongue. A second later, Valari guards emerged from the shadows, weapons trained on Marcus. "Capture him," Zyra commanded. Marcus felt cold metal clamp around his wrists. He had just saved her life, and now he was her prisoner. Marcus struggled as the Valari guards tightened the metal cuffs around his wrists. His muscles tensed, but he knew fighting back would be useless. These aliens were stronger, and their weapons were far more advanced than anything he had. The Princess Zyra stood in front of him, her golden eyes studying him with an unreadable expression. "I just saved your life," Marcus said, his voice edged with frustration. "And this is how you thank me." Zyra didn't answer. Instead, she turned to her guards. "Take him to the ship." Marcus was shoved forward, his feet stumbling as the guards led him toward a sleek, silver vessel hovering above the jungle floor. The ramp extended, and within moments, he was dragged inside. The ship's interior was unlike anything Marcus had seen before. Smooth metallic walls pulsed with soft blue energy, and floating symbols glowed in the air like holographic runes. The guards pushed him into a small holding chamber and locked the door behind him. "Great," Marcus muttered, rubbing his wrists against the cuffs. "Save a princess, get thrown in a cell. Just my luck." He looked around. The room was not a typical prison. It was more like a guest chamber. The walls shimmered with faint golden light, and there was a soft resting platform instead of a hard bench. Still, he was a prisoner. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Then, the door slid open with a soft hum. Zyra entered, her regal presence filling the room. She was no longer in battle-worn robes. She now wore a dark blue royal outfit, embroidered with golden threads that shimmered like stars. Marcus stood up, his gaze locked on her. "You going to explain why I'm here, or do you just like throwing your rescuers in cages?" Hilarious tilted her head, amusement flickering in her expression. "You saved my life," she admitted. "That is why you are still alive. That doesn't explain the cuffs." She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "You don't understand what you've done, human. In our culture, the one who saves the royal bloodline." She hesitated for a moment before continuing, "is bound to them by an ancient law." Marcus frowned. "Bound? What does that mean?" "It means," she said slowly, "that you are now part of my fate. You cannot leave." Marcus felt a weight settle in his chest. He wasn't just a prisoner. He was trapped in an alien tradition he didn't understand. "And if I refuse?" he asked. Zyra's gaze didn't waver. "Then my enemies will kill you." Silence filled the room. Marcus exhaled. Fantastic. Whatever he had gotten himself into, it was bigger than he had realized. Marcus sat on the soft, glowing surface of his so-called prison chamber, rubbing his wrists where the cuffs had been removed. He wasn't chained anymore, but that didn't mean he was free. The princess's words echoed in his head. "You are bound to me now. You cannot leave." He didn't like the sound of that. The door slid open again, and a figure stepped inside. But it wasn't Zyra this time. It was a young Valari woman in a flowing white dress, her silver hair cascading down her back. She looked nervous as she held a small tray of food. "You must eat," she said softly. Marcus eyed her warily. "And you are?" "I am Lena, a palace attendant," she replied, setting the tray down on a floating platform that adjusted to Marcus's height. "Princess Zyra asked me to ensure you are comfortable." "Comfortable?" Marcus gave a dry chuckle. "I feel more comfortable if someone actually explained what's going on." Lena hesitated. She glanced toward the door, as if checking for eavesdroppers, then took a step closer. "You don't know the truth, do you?" Marcus frowned. "What truth?" She bit her lip. "You saved the princess's life. In our empire, that means you are now linked to her fate. If she rises, you rise. If she falls, so do you." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "So that means—" Lena's voice dropped to a whisper. "It means there are people who want you dead." Marcus's muscles tensed. He had expected trouble, but this was worse than he thought. "Who?" he asked. "The High Council," Lena said, fear flashing in her glowing violet eyes. "There are powerful nobles who believe Zyra is weak, that she is too young and too merciful. They want her gone. And now, because of you, they have another reason to act." Marcus's mind raced. This wasn't just about tradition. This was a power struggle. Zyra wasn't safe, and now neither was he. "Why would saving her life be a threat?" he asked. Lena hesitated again before answering. "Because they fear you might influence her." Marcus blinked. "Influence her? I don't even know her." "It doesn't matter," Lena whispered urgently. "The fact that she allowed you to live already makes them nervous. They believe she sees something in you, something that could change her rule." Marcus exhaled sharply. He had unknowingly walked straight into an alien political war. Just then, the door slid open again, and Sarah stepped in. Lena quickly bowed and backed away. Zyra's golden eyes met Marcus's. "Walk with me," she commanded. Marcus hesitated but then stood. If he wanted answers, he had to start playing this game. He followed the princess, having no idea what awaited him next. Marcus followed Princess Zyra down the long, shining corridors of the royal ship. The walls were smooth and metallic, glowing faintly with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The air smelled faintly of alien flowers, but the beauty of the place did nothing to ease his growing sense of unease. Zyra walked with a regal grace, but there was something in her eyes, something that told Marcus she wasn't as untouchable as she appeared. They stopped in front of a large set of double doors, which slid open with a soft hum. Inside, the room was filled with maps, holographic screens, and strange alien instruments Marcus couldn't begin to understand. At the center of the room was a massive curved desk where Xyra's council gathered. The room fell silent as they entered, and every eye turned toward Marcus. Most of the figures seated around the table were older Vaylari, their skin darker than Xyra's, and their faces lined with years of experience and power. Marcus felt the weight of their stares. He knew they didn't want him here. Xyra took a seat at the head of the table, and Marcus hesitated before sitting beside her, keeping a close eye on the council members. There was a coldness in the air, thick with unspoken tension. "Princess," began one of the men, Lord Varric, his voice low and smooth like polished stone. "We must discuss the recent events." Xyra's gaze hardened. "I am well aware of the events, Lord Varric. Do you have something to add?" Lord Varric's lips curled into a thin smile. "Only that the human who has become your savior has now disrupted the balance of power in the Empire." He glanced at Marcus, his eyes sharp and calculating. "It is one thing to save the princess, but quite another to place yourself in a position of influence." Marcus felt a sudden heat rush to his face. "I don't want to be in any position of influence. I'm just trying to survive here." Lord Varric's smile widened. "That is what we fear, human. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into." Xyra slammed her hand on the table, silencing him. "Enough, Varric. You speak as though my decisions are not my own. You will not control my actions, nor will you control him." She turned to Marcus. "This is what I have been trying to tell you. There are those who believe the Empire needs to be ruled through force and tradition. They do not like my views. They do not like you." A heavy silence followed her words. Marcus glanced around the table at the other council members. Some looked down, others shifted uncomfortably. "So, what do we do now?" Marcus asked, trying to steady his breath. "You have enemies. I get it. But what's next? How do we stop this from getting worse?" Xyra stood up, her eyes fierce. "We do not hide. We stand and fight. We will expose their plans before they can act." Lord Varric stood too, his voice icy. "You will fail, princess. You are weak, and this human will be your downfall." Marcus looked at Xyra, feeling the weight of his role in all this. He wasn't just a prisoner anymore. He was part of the battle for her throne. And in some strange way, his survival was now tied to her success. But there was something more, something that Xyra wasn't saying. She met his eyes. "We have to move quickly, Marcus. I trust you." And trust is a rare thing here. The weight of the council's words hung in the air as Marcus walked alongside Princess Xyra through the narrow hallways of the royal ship. His mind was racing. One moment, he was an explorer stranded on an alien planet, and the next, he was thrust into the heart of an empire's political turmoil. Xyra was silent as they moved, her eyes fixed ahead, her posture straight and proud. But Marcus could see the tension in her shoulders, the tightness of her jaw. Despite her composed exterior, she was carrying a heavy burden. "So, what happens now?" Marcus asked, breaking the silence. "You're going to stand up to them, but what does that even mean? How can you fight a whole council of people who think you're weak?" Xyra glanced at him, her golden eyes hard. "It's not about strength, Marcus. It's about power. They don't like that I want change. I want the Vaylari Empire to be something more than just a machine that eats itself from the inside. But change is a dangerous thing here." They passed a series of open windows, and Marcus caught a glimpse of the alien landscape outside. Twin suns were setting, casting the planet's jungles in a fiery glow. It looked beautiful, but the tension inside the ship felt like it could tear it all apart. Xyra's voice dropped lower as they continued. "The High Council wants to keep the Empire the way it is, ruled by the strongest. They believe in tradition over everything else. But I believe we can be more than that. We can grow, explore, learn from others. The way we've been doing things isn't working anymore." Marcus nodded slowly. He had seen the struggles of his own people back on Earth, how sometimes the old ways kept people trapped. But this was different. He was in a whole new world, and Cyrus' fight was something he hadn't fully understood until now. "You're talking about a revolution," he said quietly. She stopped and turned to him, her eyes searching his face. "Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. But it's not just about overthrowing the old ways. It's about rethinking everything. Our culture, our laws, our relationships with other species. It's not easy, Marcus. Change never is." Marcus was about to respond when a sudden alarm blared through the ship. It was a shrill, loud sound, echoing down the hallways. His heart raced. "What's happening?" he asked, instinctively reaching for a weapon he didn't have. Zyra's face turned pale. "It's them. The council is moving against us. They're making their move." Without wasting another second, Zyra grabbed his arm. "Come. We have to get to the control room." They ran through the ship's winding corridors, the alarm still blaring. Marcus could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He had barely understood what was going on, but now it was clear. Zyra was in danger, and so was he. They reached a large, circular room at the center of the ship, where holographic screens displayed the chaotic state of the planet below. On the screen, Marcus saw Valari soldiers marching through the streets of the capital, armed and ready. It was an army ready to strike. "They've started the coup," Zyra whispered, her voice cold and determined. "This is it." Marcus turned to her, his resolve hardening. "So, what's the plan now?" Zyra's eyes locked onto his. "We fight back." The room was tense. The alarm still blared through the ship, louder now, and Zyra's hands gripped the control panel in front of her with such force that her knuckles turned white. Marcus stood beside her, his mind racing. He had no idea what to do. He was an outsider, trapped in a conflict that wasn't his own. But it didn't matter now. Zyra was in danger, and he couldn't just walk away. "They've already taken the capital," Zyra said, her voice low, filled with quiet rage. "My uncle, Lord Varric, is leading the coup." Marcus clenched his fists. "Your uncle? He was the one who tried to manipulate us before, right?" Zyra nodded. "Yes, and now he believes he can take the throne for himself. He's always wanted power, but this time, he's going too far." They both stared at the screen, where the Valari soldiers were now surrounding the palace. The situation was escalating quickly, and it was clear that they didn't have much time. Suddenly, the doors to the control room swung open. A figure stepped inside, his face hidden behind the mask of a dark hood. His footsteps were slow, deliberate, and as soon as he spoke, Marcus felt an uneasy chill run down his spine. "Princess Zyra." The man's voice was smooth and cold. "You've made a dangerous mistake." Marcus tensed, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. But Zyra remained calm, her face betraying no emotion. "Lord Varric," she said simply, not rising from her seat. Lord Varric stepped closer, his eyes locked onto Marcus. "And who is this?" he sneered. "Another one of your human distractions." Marcus held his ground. "I saved her life, and now I'm not leaving her side." Varric's laugh was cold and dismissive. "You really think you're part of this?" He took another step forward, his gaze never leaving Marcus. "You're just a pawn in this game, but you could be more than that. You could join me." Marcus's eyebrows furrowed. "Join you? What do you mean?" Varric's lips curled into a smile. "I can offer you a way out. Leave Zyra and return to Earth. Walk away from this mess. You'll be free, and you'll have a place by my side in the new regime. No one would ever dare harm you again." Zyra's face darkened as she stood. You think I would betray everything I believe in for your promises? She spat. You think I would be a part of your empire of lies and violence? Varric's smile faded, and his tone became more sinister. I don't need your beliefs, princess. I need control. And if you refuse to step down, I'll take your throne. And I'll make sure this human doesn't survive the transition. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. The threat was real. Varric wasn't playing around. But the offer hung in the air, tempting in its simplicity. Walk away from the chaos, leave Tyra behind, and return to Earth, free of all this. But Marcus couldn't ignore the truth. He was already too deep in this. And Tyra, she was more than just a princess to him now. I'm not going anywhere, Marcus said firmly. And neither is she. Varric's eyes narrowed, his expression darkening. Then you've made your choice. With that, he turned, striding toward the door. But don't say I didn't warn you, human. Your fate is sealed. As the door slid shut behind him, Tyra turned to Marcus. Her eyes held a quiet gratitude, but also a weight of responsibility. We don't have much time, Tyra said, her voice steady. It's time to fight back. Marcus nodded. There was no turning back now. They had to stand together, or they would both fall. The quiet hum of the ship's engines was the only sound in the control room as Tyra and Marcus stood in tense silence. The threat of Varric's coup was growing by the minute, and every moment felt heavier than the last. Tyra had been trying to stay calm, but Marcus could see the flicker of fear in her eyes. She wasn't just fighting for her throne. She was fighting for the future of her entire empire. We need to act fast, she said, her voice steady but urgent. Varric has already taken the palace. He'll be making his way here soon. If we don't get to the main control center and disable his communication systems, he'll be able to issue orders across the planet. Marcus nodded. Then we need a plan, and we need it now. Tyra tapped a few holographic symbols on the control panel, bringing up a map of the ship. This ship is huge, and there are multiple levels. We'll have to move through the lower corridors to avoid detection. The central control room is on the upper level, but Varric's forces will likely have already taken control of the access points. Marcus's mind raced. The princess had made it clear that he was involved in this whether he liked it or not. But now he didn't have the luxury of hesitation. He had to focus. Okay, he said, we need to get to the lower levels, and we need to get to the engine room. If we can disable the ship's power systems, we can buy ourselves enough time to get to the control room and shut down the enemy's communications. Tyra looked at him, impressed. I wasn't expecting you to suggest that. But you're right. The power systems are critical, and disabling them will give us leverage. Marcus glanced at the door, his instincts telling him that they didn't have much time. We don't have the luxury of talking. Let's go. They moved quickly through the corridors, keeping to the shadows. Marcus had never been this deep inside a ship before, but Shira seemed to know the layout well. Her calm confidence was reassuring, but he could tell that every step they took was filled with danger. As they made their way toward the lower levels, they encountered a small group of Varric soldiers. Marcus's heart skipped a beat, but Sarah reacted instantly. She moved quickly, her hand flashing to her belt, and drawing a small energy blade. Stay low, Tyra whispered, crouching behind a corner. We'll take them out quietly. Marcus nodded. He wasn't an expert in stealth, but he had learned a few tricks over the years. Moving quickly but quietly, he followed Tyra's lead. Together, they took down the soldiers without making a sound, using their skills and the element of surprise to keep them from alerting the rest of the ship. Once the coast was clear, they continued moving forward. The air felt thick with tension, and Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. They finally reached the engine room, a vast chamber filled with pulsating energy conduits and flickering lights. The low hum of the ship's power systems was almost deafening. Tyra immediately moved to the control panel, her fingers flying over the alien symbols. I need a few more seconds, she muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. Marcus kept watch, his eyes darting around the room. The seconds felt like hours, and he could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on him. Finally, the ship's lights flickered, and Syra nodded. "It's done. We've cut the power to their communications." Marcus exhaled. It wasn't over, but they had taken a critical step. Now they had to move to the control room and face Varric's forces head-on. Syra looked at him, a fire in her eyes. "We're not done yet, Marcus. We have one more battle to fight." Marcus met her gaze. "I'm with you. Let's finish this." The air in the ship felt heavier now, thick with tension. Marcus could feel his pulse in his throat as he followed Syra down yet another set of metallic hallways. The lights overhead flickered intermittently, casting eerie shadows on the walls. They had cut the power to the communication systems, but that was only a small victory. Now they had to face Varric and his soldiers head-on. "We're almost there," Syra whispered, her voice tense but determined. She had already moved through her plans in her mind a dozen times. There was no turning back now. Marcus glanced at her, seeing the fire in her eyes. This wasn't just about the throne anymore. It was about everything she believed in. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for the future of her people. And for some strange reason, he was a part of it now. As they approached the final corridor leading to the control room, Marcus felt the weight of his role settle deep in his chest. He wasn't just an outsider anymore. He was part of this war. "Ready?" Syra asked, her eyes locking onto his. Marcus nodded, his grip tightening around the blaster he had taken from one of Varric's soldiers. "Let's do this." They rounded the corner, and suddenly, the main control room came into view. The door was wide open, and inside, Marcus could see Varric's soldiers standing guard, their weapons raised and ready. The room itself was a maze of holographic screens and control panels, with Lord Varric standing at the far end. "Welcome, Princess," Varric said, his voice laced with cold amusement as he turned to face them. "I see you've made it this far, but it's too late." Syra's eyes narrowed. "You won't win, Varric. I'll stop you." Varric laughed, the sound echoing off the walls. "You've already lost, Princess. The people don't want you. They want power. They want order. And I am the only one who can give them that." Marcus stepped forward, his stance steady. "You're wrong. The people will follow the one who truly leads, not the one who uses fear to control them." Varric's eyes flashed with anger, but he didn't move. Instead, he nodded to his soldiers. "Deal with them." The soldiers surged forward, weapons raised. But Syra was faster. She flipped the switch on her energy blade, and in a flash of light, she sliced through the first soldier who came at her. Marcus wasn't far behind. He aimed his blaster and fired, taking out two more with precise shots. The battle had begun. But it wasn't just a physical fight. It was a fight for control. Control of the Empire, control of the future. As the soldiers clashed with Syra and Marcus, Varric stood in the background, watching with cold eyes. "Enough of this," Varric snapped. He raised his hand, and a force field appeared around him, protecting him from any attack. "You can't win, Princess. You don't have the strength." Syra's eyes flicked toward Marcus, and in that moment, they both knew what they had to do. "We don't need strength, Varric," Syra said, her voice unwavering. "We have something you'll never have. Trust. Trust from the people. Trust from those who believe in a better future." With one final decisive move, Marcus threw a makeshift grenade at the control panel, short-circuiting the systems. The force field around Varric flickered for a moment. And that was all the time Syra needed. She rushed forward, her energy blade cutting through the air, and with one swift strike, she disarmed Varric. Varric stumbled back, fury flashing in his eyes. "You'll regret this." Syra stood tall, her blade raised. "The only thing I regret is trusting you." With a final, decisive move, she knocked him to the ground. His reign was over. The control room fell silent, the battle now over. The soldiers, seeing their leader defeated, surrendered one by one. Marcus and Sarah stood together, their breaths heavy, but their eyes locked in a shared understanding. "We've won," Marcus said, his voice low but filled with certainty. Zyra nodded. "Yes, but the real work starts now. The Empire is mine to rebuild, and it will be built on a foundation of trust, not fear." Marcus smiled, a weight lifting from his shoulders. He hadn't just helped save her life. He had helped change the future of an entire empire. And in that moment, he knew that whatever came next, he would be by her side. The battle was over. Varric and his forces had been defeated, and the threat to Xyra's throne had been crushed. The royal ship now felt strangely quiet, the once persistent alarms gone, replaced by an eerie calm. Marcus stood beside Xyra in the main hall of the ship, the same place where their battle had begun. The walls were scorched from the firefight, and the air still hummed with tension. But there was something else now, a sense of victory. "We did it," Zyra said, her voice low but filled with emotion. She looked out the window at the planet below, the twin suns beginning to set, casting a golden glow across the world she was destined to rule. Marcus nodded, his eyes still scanning the area, as if expecting another attack. But Xyra was right. They had won. The crew of the ship, the remaining soldiers who had supported Zyra, began to file into the room. They looked at Marcus with a mixture of respect and wariness. A human, once a captive, now a hero. Zyra turned to him, her golden eyes serious. "There's one more thing we need to discuss, Marcus." He raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "I can't move forward without you. You've been by my side through everything. I need your help to rebuild." She paused, taking a deep breath. "But there's something else." Marcus looked at her, sensing the weight in her words. "What is it?" Zyra hesitated for a moment, her gaze meeting his. "I need to know if you're ready for the future, if you're ready to stand with me in more than just this fight." Marcus felt his heart race. This was a moment he hadn't expected. Everything had been about survival and fighting back. But now, it was about something else. "Are you asking me to stay?" Marcus asked carefully. Zyra nodded, her eyes never leaving his. "I am. Not just as a soldier or a protector, but as someone who will help me lead. I can't do this alone, Marcus, and I trust you more than anyone." The room seemed to hold its breath as Marcus processed her words. His mind flashed back to his life on Earth, how he had come here by accident, how he had been thrown into something he never asked for. And yet, over the course of everything, he had found a purpose. "I came here to survive," Marcus said slowly, "but now I'm realizing it's more than that. I didn't just save your life, Zyra. You saved mine, too." Zyra's gaze softened, but there was something determined behind her eyes. "This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about building a future where our people, human and Vaylari alike, can thrive together." Marcus took a step closer to her, his voice steady. "I'm in. I'm with you." Her eyes brightened, a genuine smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "You won't regret it." But even as she spoke, Marcus felt the weight of the decision settle deep within him. He had chosen to stand with her, with Zyra, with the future of an entire empire hanging in the balance. Zyra turned, leading him toward the balcony where the planet's surface was bathed in the light of the setting suns. "We have much work to do, Marcus, but I know that together, we can change everything." Marcus stood beside her, looking out over the vast landscape. He had made his choice. He wasn't just a survivor anymore. He was part of something far bigger. And as the two of them stood there, united, the future of the Vaylari Empire and humanity was in their hands. The day after the battle, the royal ship was alive with activity. The sounds of people working, voices calling orders, and the soft hum of the ship's engines filled the air. It was a strange sense of normalcy, but it was also the calm before a new storm, the beginning of something different, something new. Marcus stood in front of a large viewing window, watching as the planet below slowly rotated, the distant cities glowing beneath the fading light of the twin suns. It had been weeks since the coup, and the work of rebuilding had begun in earnest. But even now, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was still adjusting to this strange new world he had found himself in. Admiring the view, Tyra's voice broke through his thoughts, and he turned to see her standing at the door, a slight smile on her lips. Marcus grinned, stepping away from the window, trying to get used to it all. "I never thought I'd be standing here, helping rebuild an empire." Tyra walked into the room, her presence commanding yet calm. "And you've been doing a remarkable job so far." She paused for a moment, her eyes softening. "It means a lot to me, Marcus. More than you know." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Over the past few weeks, he had come to understand the gravity of what they were building together. It wasn't just about political alliances or military victories. It was about creating a future. The new Valeri Empire was starting to take shape. With the support of the people who had stayed loyal to Xyra, they began to rebuild the council, focusing on those who shared Xyra's vision of progress and unity. Varric's supporters were either imprisoned or exiled, their hold on the empire broken. Xyra was now seen not just as a princess, but as the true leader of the empire, a ruler who had earned the respect of her people and of Marcus. But despite all the progress, Marcus couldn't ignore the challenge that lay ahead. There were still many who questioned Xyra's ability to rule. The empire was fractured, and healing would take time. "Do you think they'll accept the changes we're trying to make?" Marcus asked, his voice uncertain. Xyra walked over to a nearby desk, picking up a tablet and tapping through a few reports. "Change is always difficult, but it's necessary." She looked up at him, her expression hardening with resolve. "There will always be resistance, but we have the support of the people who matter, the ones who truly want a future built on trust and unity." Marcus knew she was right. The real work was just beginning. The rebuilding of the empire wasn't just about restoring old systems. It was about creating a new vision for the future, one where humans and Valeri could coexist, learn from each other, and thrive together. "And you," Kahara added, her voice softening again. "You're part of that future, Marcus. You've become more than just an ally or protector. You're my partner in this. Together, we'll make sure that this empire is built to last." Marcus felt his chest tighten. He had been a stranger in this world when he first arrived, but now he was something more. He was a part of something bigger, something important. "I'm with you, Tyra," he said, his voice steady. "Whatever it takes." Tyra smiled, her eyes reflecting the warmth of the setting suns outside. "Then let's get to work." The future of the Valeri Empire was uncertain, but one thing was clear: they were no longer just survivors. Together, they would build something lasting, something that would stand the test of time. And as they turned toward the door, ready to face the challenges ahead, Marcus knew that this was just the beginning.